Welcome the Lord's chosen. They didn't want peace. They wanted proof that you'd stay small. You ever notice how every time you level up, somebody somewhere suddenly gets amnesia about what you've survived? It's funny. Scientists say snakes shed their skin to grow, but they forgot to mention humans shed fake people to reign. That's not biology. That's spiritual housekeeping. This isn't your comeback story. That would imply you ever left. What's happening here is a full-scale regime change. You didn't just return to the game, you bought the arena, rewrote the rules, and now you charge admission. The world calls it confidence, but let's be honest. It's just you finally operating without permission. Every scar has turned into a strategy, every loss into leverage. You stopped negotiating with fear and started billing it for wasted time. So yeah, you boshed the FK up, and this time it's not personal. It's possession, total, ruthless, royal, domination. Number one, you didn't rise. You reclaimed what was always yours. There's a difference between fighting for something and realizing it already belonged to you. For years, you were taught to chase validation, to hustle for acceptance, to climb invisible ladders built by people who secretly hoped you'd never reach the top. But one day, something shifted. You stopped reaching, and you started remembering. You remembered that what makes you powerful was never given, so it could never be taken. That's when everything changed. You didn't rise from the bottom. You returned from the confusion. You started walking like someone who finally remembered their password to destiny. Every lesson, every heartbreak, every betrayal wasn't pushing you higher. It was clearing your throne. The seat was there all along. It just needed the version of you that stopped asking for permission to sit. The truth is, you were never ordinary. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to believe you were. The moment you stepped back and looked at the bigger picture, you saw it. They weren't intimidated by your success. They were terrified of your clarity. Because clarity exposes hierarchy. Once you knew who you were, their control expired. You stopped auditioning for roles in stories beneath you. You stopped trying to explain your worth to people who only understood discounts. You outgrew convincing, and that's when your energy changed. You didn't just boss up. You reset the frequency. And when you did, everything that wasn't built for you fell off naturally. Not because you forced it, but because it couldn't breathe in your new altitude. This wasn't a rise, it was a return to confidence without arrogance, power without apology, grace without weakness. You stopped competing and started occupying. You realized that no one can block what's already imprinted in your spirit. That's not ego, that's alignment. Now the people who once doubted you whisper your name with the same mouth that questioned your worth. And the beautiful irony, you don't even need to prove them wrong. You already did by existing at this level. You didn't rise to the top. You remembered you were never supposed to be anywhere else. Number two, you didn't evolve. You upgraded the entire system. You reached a point where personal growth stopped being about fixing yourself and started being about reprogramming everything around you. You realized the old way of doing things wasn't broken. It was outdated. You weren't meant to adjust to a system designed for mediocrity. You were built to expose it. Evolution suggests you adapted to your environment, but you didn't. You outgrew it so completely that it had no choice but to adapt to you. Every level you hit forced the people around you to update how they operated. You stopped being compatible with half-hearted energy, shallow motives, and surface-level conversations. You didn't just outgrow people, you outgrew patterns, mindsets, and cycles that kept recycling the same lessons. You became the update everyone needed but few were ready for. And when they couldn't understand you anymore, that wasn't isolation. That was your firewall activating. You stopped living reactively and started moving architecturally. You began to build life on purpose instead of out of pain. You stopped patching emotional leaks and started redesigning the whole structure. You no longer wanted peace that required shrinking, or love that demanded pretending. You learned that true evolution doesn't mean blending in. It means creating systems that reflect your growth instead of suppressing it. And let's be honest, it confused people. They called it arrogance, when really it was optimization. You weren't being difficult, you were just no longer available for anything that couldn't function at your frequency. You no longer waited for understanding. You became your own instruction manual. That's not rebellion, that's reform. You started operating with intention, so sharp it cut through old habits like code being rewritten. You learned to detach from outdated software, the need to please, the urge to explain, the guilt of choosing yourself. Those were bugs in the system you used to run on. You deleted them and installed boundaries, self-respect, and emotional intelligence. So no, you didn't evolve. Evolution is too small a word for what you've done. You built a new operating system, one that doesn't just survive reality, but creates it. You didn't fit into the world's update. You became the version everyone else now has to catch up to. Number 3, you stopped explaining and started executing. There comes a point when you get tired of giving speeches to people who are never going to listen. You realize that talking about what you're going to do doesn't build credibility. Results do. You reached a stage where your time became too expensive for debates. You understood that power doesn't argue, it acts. And from that moment, everything about you shifted. You used to over-explain yourself, your decisions, your dreams, your boundaries, because you wanted to be understood. But then you realized that people who genuinely respect you don't need paragraphs, and people who don't will twist every sentence anyway. So you withdrew your energy from explanation and redirected it into execution. That's when your life started moving faster, smoother, and quieter. The noise stopped, the results spoke. You learned that silence isn't weakness, it's focus. Every minute spent defending yourself was a minute stolen from your next move, so you became intentional with your energy. You stopped convincing people that you were serious and just became serious. You let your work, your growth, and your discipline handle the introductions. And the irony is, once you stopped explaining, people started paying attention, because mystery gets more respect than repetition. You stopped performing for validation. You stopped announcing every idea. You understood that real power moves in silence, not because it's hiding, but because it doesn't owe anyone a preview. You learned that when you're truly aligned with your purpose, you don't need to announce progress. It shows. Your actions became louder than any statement you could ever make. And that's what separated you. The talkers stayed stuck rehearsing their plans while you were out there living them. The difference between them and you wasn't luck. It was discipline. You stopped needing to prove your worth and started producing it. That shift from explanation to execution is where your dominance was born. Now people look at you and wonder how you did it. They miss the years when you stopped talking and started building. They forgot that silence doesn't mean absence. It means something unstoppable is under construction. You didn't need to explain, you just needed to move. And you did, straight into your power. Number 4, you learned that silence isn't peace, it's ammunition. Your quiet wasn't surrender, it was strategy. For a long time, people mistook your pause for weakness, as if your absence from the noise meant you'd lost your edge. But what they didn't understand is that real power doesn't waste its breath. Real power sits still, observes, recalibrates, and gathers intelligence. While they were talking, you were tracking. While they were guessing, you were gathering. Your silence became your storage room for strength. You didn't retreat because you were scared of conflict. You withdrew because you understood that precision requires patience. every word you didn't speak, every clapback you didn't deliver, every move you didn't rush. That was you loading the chamber with clarity, strategy, and self-control. You realized that winning isn't about making the most noise, it's about landing the cleanest hit. And silence, when used correctly, sharpens the blade. In that space, you reloaded mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. You studied patterns. You healed your triggers. You outgrew the urge to react and replaced it with the discipline to respond. By the time you stepped back into the arena, you weren't just louder, you were lethal. You didn't come back with noise, you came back with aim. The difference shows. People who once underestimated you now feel the weight of your stillness because they finally understand it isn't emptiness, it's stored energy. You've turned restraint into a weapon and patience into a power move. You no longer rush to prove a point. You let timing do it for you. Silence stopped being a shield and became a sword. It's not passive anymore. It's active. Every time you choose not to react, you're choosing to reload. And every time you re-emerge, you hit with precision so sharp that it cuts through noise like it isn't even there. You're not just surviving conflict. You're mastering it by refusing to play on anyone else's tempo. This is why your silence unsettles people now. They can't tell if you're done or just getting started. They can't read you, and that unreadability is your power. You're no longer quiet to avoid a fight. You're quiet to win it before it even starts. Number 5, you burned bridges, then built empires from the ashes. At some point you realized that holding on was costing you more than letting go. You got tired of walking across bridges that only led back to smallness. You stopped begging people to understand your vision, stopped shrinking to make others comfortable, and stopped apologizing for wanting more. That's when the fire started, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You understood that some connections aren't meant to be repaired. They're meant to be reduced to lessons. When you stopped caring about who walked away, everything got lighter. The fear of being misunderstood disappeared the moment you understood yourself. You realized your path wasn't supposed to be crowded. Legacy doesn't require a fan club. It requires focus. So you let the bridges burn, and instead of mourning the smoke, you read it like a signal, a message that something greater was waiting beyond that old landscape. People called it cold, but it wasn't. It was necessary. You can't build empires with the same hands that keep reaching back for approval. You knew you couldn't step into your next level while dragging dead weight disguised as loyalty. Burning those bridges wasn't destruction, it was purification. Everything false turned to ash, and everything real remained untouched. That fire became your rebirth. It forced you to rebuild from your own materials. Your resilience, your grind, your faith, your discipline. You stopped borrowing energy from people who never intended to recharge you. You started running on your own power, and that's when your empire began to rise, not from comfort, but from conviction. You built foundations from everything that tried to break you, and now the world calls it strength, when really it was just you refusing to go back. The ashes didn't represent loss. They represented proof that you were done settling. Every bridge you burned lit the path toward the version of you that couldn't be manipulated or delayed anymore. And now, the people who once doubted you can only watch from the other side of those same bridges, wondering how the fire that was supposed to finish you became the very light that crowned you. Number 6, you became immune to validation. There was a time when you cared about being liked, understood, or praised. You wanted people to see your effort, to acknowledge your growth, to say, "You're doing great." But after a while, you noticed something. The same people who clapped for you on Monday were silent by Friday. The same mouths that hyped you up in public were quiet when it really mattered. That's when it clicked. Applause is often just noise, not truth. You stopped chasing it and started building results that speak without needing an audience. Once you saw how cheaply people hand out approval, it lost its value. You realized that some compliments are just manipulations dressed in kindness, and that most people only clap when your success doesn't outshine theirs. So you stopped performing for people who confuse convenience with support. You stopped giving discounts on your worth. You stopped treating applause like oxygen, because real ones don't need to be told they're great. They know it. You learned that validation is a drug. It feels good, but it's addictive and fleeting. It makes you dependent on external energy that can be withdrawn at any time. So you detoxed. You started building self-trust, so strong that you no longer needed to check who was watching. You became your own scoreboard, your own proof, your own stamp of approval. That's what scared people. They realized they couldn't control you anymore. You replaced validation with evidence. You started letting consistency speak instead of words. Your success became the loudest statement you'll ever make, and it's one that can't be argued with. Evidence is unbothered, undeniable, and permanent. People can talk around it, but they can't erase it. That's why it terrifies the pretenders, because your wins exposed their wishful thinking. You don't post for attention, you post for documentation. You don't need likes to feel legitimate because you live it every day. You don't measure your impact in reactions anymore, but in results, peace, and progress. Validation used to feed you, but now it's irrelevant. You're too focused on execution to care who's impressed. You've become untouchable in the best way, because when you stop needing approval, you start breathing freedom. Number 7, you outgrew survival. You switched to strategy. There was a time when your whole life revolved around getting through the day, trying to keep your head above water, trying to make things work, trying to not fall apart. You operated on survival mode for so long that chaos felt normal. You reacted to everything because that's all you knew. Quick fixes, damage control, emotional fire drills. But then one day, you got tired of just making it. You realized that living just to survive was robbing you of the very life you were trying to protect. That's when something shifted. You stopped running from problems and started studying them. You stopped seeing setbacks as punishment and started viewing them as data. That's when you transitioned from victim to visionary. Survival made you sharp, but strategy made you unstoppable. You started asking better questions. Not, how do I get through this, but how do I build something that can't be broken again? That's when your whole perspective evolved. You stopped spending energy on panic and started investing it in planning. You stopped fighting fires and began building systems. You learned that peace isn't found, it's engineered. You began structuring your life around intention, not impulse. Everything you do now has purpose behind it. You no longer move just to move. You move with precision, with thought, with design. You're no longer reacting to life, you're orchestrating it. The shift was subtle but powerful. You started saying no to things that drained you, not because you were cold, but because you were calculating capacity. You started managing your time like currency, protecting your mental energy like property, and treating your dreams like contracts. You stopped living off emotion and started executing with logic. That's when everything began aligning. Not because luck showed up, but because you did with a plan. You went from surviving the storm to predicting the weather. You no longer pray for peace. You plan for it. That's what makes you dangerous now. You're not just strong, you're strategic. You don't move for attention, you move for impact. Survival taught you to endure, but strategy taught you to expand. And now every move you make is proof that you were never meant to just live. You were meant to lead. Number 8, you didn't prove them wrong. You made them irrelevant. At one point you wanted so badly to show them they were mistaken about you. Every move you made was fueled by the thought of proving a point, that you were worthy, capable, destined for more. But eventually you realized that even trying to prove them wrong still centered them in your story. You were still giving them real estate in your head, letting their opinions guide your direction. That's when you decided to flip the script. You stopped playing defense and started living offense. You understood that some people don't deserve the privilege of being your motivation. Their disbelief wasn't a challenge, it was a distraction. So you cut the cord. You no longer needed to win in front of them. You decided to win beyond them. That's the moment everything changed. The moment their names stopped echoing in your thoughts and your purpose started speaking louder. When you stopped performing for your doubters, your growth became cleaner, faster, and quieter. You no longer had to craft comebacks or seek acknowledgement. You just built. You just moved. You just created results that didn't need to prove anything. They simply existed as undeniable truth. You became so focused on building your vision that they faded into background noise, no longer relevant to the narrative you were living. The irony is, they probably think you proved them wrong. But you didn't. You outgrew the conversation entirely. You reached a level where their opinions don't register, their judgments don't sting, and their validation doesn't matter. You built a life that doesn't require an audience to feel fulfilled. You rewrote your story so completely that they no longer fit into the genre. The plot evolved, the cast changed, and the scenes they tried to sabotage no longer exist. That's not revenge, that's evolution. Because the greatest silence isn't ignoring them, it's outlasting them. You didn't need to correct their misunderstanding. You just became undeniable. You didn't erase them with words, you erased them with progress. And now, the beauty is this. They still talk about you, but you don't even remember their relevance. You didn't prove them wrong. You made them unnecessary. Number 9, you weaponized every wound. Pain didn't just toughen you, it trained you. Every betrayal, every loss, every disappointment became a line of code in the system that built the version of you no one can dismantle. You learned that pain doesn't just break people, it builds specialists. You stopped asking why me and started asking what now. You turned your scars into strategy. You learned the patterns, the psychology, the red flags, and the silence. What used to hurt you started educating you. And that's when you stopped bleeding and started building. They thought the hits would finish you, but all they did was refine your aim. You studied the pain until it became language, until you could read motives without words, sense betrayal without evidence, and predict outcomes without warning. Your wounds became your textbooks, and every lesson written in blood turned into wisdom written in gold. You didn't just survive. You reverse-engineered your suffering into success. You stopped healing just to feel better. You healed to function smarter. You learned how to control your emotions instead of letting them control you. You learned that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's closure without access. You learned that silence isn't repression, it's observation. Every painful moment that once made you doubt yourself became a skill set. You became analytical, strategic, discerning, the kind of person who can't be played twice. You didn't waste your pain, you reinvested it. You turned heartbreak into drive, rejection into redirection, failure into formula. You built from everything meant to bury you, and now those same experiences have become your foundation. You stopped being emotionally reactive and started being emotionally engineered. And the difference shows. You no longer flinch at chaos. You forecast it. That's what scares people now. They can't use what once broke you because it no longer controls you. You've taken every wound and turned it into a weapon, not to hurt others, but to protect your peace, your focus, and your empire. You've industrialized your pain into productivity. The suffering they hoped would silence you became the system that now funds your evolution. They tried to wound you. Instead, they trained your precision. Number 10, You realized power isn't taken, it's remembered. There was never a moment when you suddenly became powerful. The truth is, you always were. You just forgot. Life buried your confidence under conditioning, expectations, and the opinions of people who never wanted you to realize how much authority you already had. You were trained to seek approval, to play small, to wait for permission. But somewhere along the line, something snapped. You stopped asking, "How do I get power?" and started asking, "Where did I leave it?" That's when everything changed. The crown was never up for grabs. It was sitting in plain sight the whole time, covered by noise, distractions, and self-doubt. You weren't supposed to steal it or earn it. You were supposed to remember it was already yours. And that remembrance wasn't just awareness. It was a revolution. Because when you remember who you are, the systems built to make you forget start collapsing. You stopped chasing recognition and started radiating identity. You didn't need validation, approval, or applause to feel legitimate anymore. You realized that real power doesn't compete. It commands. It doesn't beg. It belongs. You began moving differently, quieter, steadier, sharper. Your energy stopped asking, "Am I allowed?" and started saying, "I am." That's the kind of confidence that can't be taught. It's remembered from somewhere deep within your soul. Once you reconnected with that memory, everything external lost control. People who used to intimidate you now just look loud. Situations that once overwhelmed you now feel small. You understood that power isn't about dominance. It's about awareness, knowing that nothing external can give or take what was wired into you before you even arrived here. That's why you don't argue anymore. You don't chase. You don't prove. You just are. That remembrance made you unshakable. Because when you know who you are, no loss can define you, no betrayal can unseat you, and no setback can dethrone you. You remembered your worth, your purpose, your strength. And the moment you did, the world had to recalibrate around you. You didn't take the crown. You simply stopped forgetting it was already on your head. Number 11. You don't compete. You redefine the game. There was a time when you thought the goal was to win against others. You looked left and right, measuring your progress by people who weren't even walking your path. But at some point you realized that competition is just distraction dressed up as ambition. Competing means you're still comparing, and comparison is a trap. So you stopped running in lanes that were never designed for your speed. You dismantled the track, rewrote the rules, and built your own arena. That's not rebellion. That's evolution. You learned that trying to outdo others only keeps you playing small, because it limits your vision to what already exists. You weren't born to repeat what's been done. You were born to redefine what's possible. While everyone else was busy chasing positions, you were creating categories. You stopped trying to be better than and started being different from. That's what separated you. Originality over competition, depth over display. Now people look at you and can't quite figure out how you did it. You don't move like them, sound like them, or think like them. And that unsettles them, because your presence disrupts the comfort of imitation. You became unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. They're still trying to calculate moves in a game you stopped playing. You didn't beat them. You transcended them. You built your own blueprint, one made from your failures, your risks, your wild ideas that didn't fit anywhere else. You stopped seeking seats at tables and started building entire floors. You learned that when you create your own lane, traffic no longer matters. People will either adjust to your pace or get left behind, but you won't slow down to make them comfortable. The truth is, competition dies when self-awareness is born. Once you realized who you are and what you carry, comparison became irrelevant. You stopped running against others and started running with purpose. You're not chasing trophies. You're shaping standards. You don't compete for attention. You command it by existing in alignment. That's what redefining the game looks like. You stopped trying to win it and became the reason it has to evolve. Number 12. You made discipline the new flex. You reached a point where you got tired of seeing people talk about success more than they actually worked for it. You stopped being impressed by noise, and you started respecting structure. You realized that the real currency of power isn't talent, it's consistency. While everyone else was chasing shortcuts, trends, and attention, you were mastering repetition. You weren't focused on looking like you were winning. You were building systems that made winning inevitable. You learned that discipline doesn't need to be glamorous to be effective. It's not the highlight reel. It's the part no one sees. The early mornings, the unexciting routines, the quiet sacrifices, the self-check moments where you choose focus over distraction again and again. That's what separates the loud from the legendary. Anyone can post motivation, but not everyone can sustain momentum. You did, and that became your superpower. While others chased aesthetics, you chased alignment. You stopped doing things to look successful and started doing things that keep you successful. You stopped needing to be seen grinding and started falling in love with being grounded. Your routine became your ritual. Your consistency became your confidence. You no longer chase the high of results. You live by the rhythm of discipline. And that scared people, because when you're consistent, you become predictable. But not in a boring way, in a dangerous way. People know what to expect from you: precision, stability, excellence. There's no guesswork, no off days, no emotional volatility. You've become reliable in a world addicted to randomness. That's how you quietly outlasted the competition, through clean, lethal focus. You learned that real dominance isn't loud, it's composed. It's not about flexing outcomes, it's about maintaining standards. The strongest ones don't scream about their grind. They move in a rhythm too disciplined to be disrupted. You don't need to prove your worth. Your habits already testify. You made structure look sexy and focus look dangerous. That's your new flex. Calm, consistent power. The kind that doesn't need validation, noise, or performance. Because the truth is, when discipline becomes your lifestyle, success stops being an event. It becomes your default setting. Number 13, you mastered detachment without losing empathy. There's a rare kind of strength in caring deeply without clinging tightly. You learned that lesson the hard way. For a long time, you gave your energy to outcomes, people, and situations that didn't deserve that much power over your peace. You tied your emotions to how things turned out, who stayed, and who understood you. But then life showed you the truth. Attachment is often the silent thief of balance. So you let go, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally understood that peace isn't found in control. It's found in trust. You stopped chasing outcomes, people, and praise. You realized that forcing things only creates friction, and what's meant for you never needs pressure to fit. That's when you became water, calm, adaptive, flowing around obstacles instead of fighting them. You learned to respond instead of react, to release instead of resist. Detachment stopped meaning indifference. It started meaning clarity. You began to love people freely, without needing them to behave a certain way to keep your heart steady. You learned that empathy isn't about absorbing everyone's pain. It's about understanding it, without drowning in it. You became aware of how easily emotional overload can disguise itself as compassion. Now you listen with boundaries, care with awareness, and give without losing yourself. That's real empathy, not self-sacrifice, but self-mastery. And the beauty of it is, once you detached, your energy became magnetic. You stopped gripping life so tightly that it slipped through your hands. The less you chased, the more things started aligning naturally. You learned that detachment isn't cold. It's confident. It's knowing you can walk away without bitterness, because what's real will always find its way back. You became untouchable by anything not vibrating on your frequency. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. You've trained your emotions to follow your peace, not your fears. You don't argue, beg, or explain. You simply let what's not in tune fade out of your life like background noise. That's what emotional freedom looks like. Empathy without exhaustion, love without dependency, peace without permission. You didn't harden your heart. You just made it wiser. And now, everything you attract feels lighter, cleaner, and truer, because it matches the stillness you worked so hard to earn. Number 14. You don't seek revenge, you embody proof. There was a time when you wanted justice to look like payback. You wanted the people who lied, doubted, or betrayed you to feel the same sting they gave you. But then you grew, and with growth came perspective. You realized that revenge still keeps you orbiting their energy. It's still a reaction, not creation. So you shifted from trying to hurt them to simply outlasting them. You stopped wanting them to feel your pain and started wanting them to witness your peace. You learned that the best response to betrayal isn't rage, it's results. Every time you leveled up, you proved something words never could. You didn't need to clap back. You just let your consistency speak louder. The same people who dismissed you now have to watch you thrive in spaces they swore you'd never reach. That's not revenge, that's revelation. Your success became the mirror they can't escape, reflecting every false judgment they made about you. You stopped needing closure because you became it. You became the evidence that their version of you was never real. You don't argue with lies anymore. You expose them by living in truth. Every win, every move, every quiet elevation is your testimony. You're not proving them wrong, you're proving yourself right. And that's a different kind of power, one rooted in dignity, not spite. Revenge demands attention, proof commands it. You learned to let time do what anger can't, humble people. You understood that silence, when paired with success, is the most deafening sound in the world. You no longer seek validation from those who doubted you because their disbelief is now part of your evidence. Now when they see you, they don't just see someone who made it. They see someone who transformed through the pain they caused. You turned wounds into wisdom, setbacks into stages, and doubt into drive. That's why your existence now unsettles them. It reminds them that they were never your downfall, just your direction. You don't seek revenge because you don't need it. You are the proof. Your life is the full circle moment. Every step you take is a quiet, graceful reminder that you were never trying to destroy them. You were too busy becoming undeniable. At this stage, you're not just rising, you've risen. You've crossed that invisible line where validation lost its value, revenge lost its thrill, and noise lost its hold. You've seen too much, learned too deeply, and healed too intelligently to ever go back to small thinking. Everything they threw at you became part of your blueprint. Every wound a strategy, every silence a seed, every betrayal a recalibration of vision. You didn't just survive the chaos, you learned how to conduct it. That's what separates those who rebuild from those who reign. You didn't just come back stronger, you came back smarter. You burned bridges that couldn't carry your destiny and built empires from the ashes. You learned that being chosen isn't about luck, it's about endurance. You were forged in misunderstanding, tested in isolation, and revealed in timing. The people who counted you out forgot that chosen ones don't fold under pressure, they form under it. You mastered detachment without losing your empathy, turned your pain into power, and stopped proving anyone wrong because your evolution made them irrelevant. You stopped playing on their level. You built your own. And now look at you, calm but commanding, silent but strategic, humble but unstoppable. You don't seek revenge because your existence is the verdict. You don't chase validation because you are the evidence. Every step you take, every move you make is a message to anyone watching. Domination doesn't require destruction. It requires direction. This isn't a comeback story. It's an era of ownership. You've taken the chaos, the doubt, and the pain, and turned it into clarity, confidence, and conviction. You're no longer proving your worth. You're embodying it. And the truth is, your success will echo longer than their opinions ever did. So, if this message spoke to your spirit, if you felt that shift inside, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. Drop a like, share this with someone who's in their transformation phase, and comment below with your favorite line or moment. This is your tribe, your reminder, and your proof that you didn't come back for applause. You came back for the throne. Stay blessed always.